Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Brear, and welcome to episode 50 of the 11FS FinTech Insider Breakfast Show. In this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday, straight into your homes at 8:30 BST, here live on LinkedIn. This Tuesday morning, I am thrilled to be joined by Sophie Guibaud, who is the Chief Growth Officer at OpenPayd. This morning, what we're going to be doing is talking about Sophie's career journey, cross-border banking and payments more generally, and as the world goes more and more digital, really kind of what that means. Good morning, Sophie. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we've had people joining us on holiday and bank holidays, but first time on maternity leave. So how are you doing?
I'm very good, David. I'm really happy to be here with you. First engagement during maternity leave, really.
Well, it's good. Well, I mean, maternity leave, like from what I can remember, I'm pretty sure it's like, really just focusing on the baby and almost not getting dressed for at least 3 months, basically. So thank you for getting dressed and coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. Anyway, thank you so much for everybody for joining in this morning. As always, what we like to see is lots of kind of comments over on LinkedIn. What we'll do is, if you've got any questions for Sophie as we go through, stick them on LinkedIn. We'll weave them into the conversation and keep us going. So, I mean, Sophie, as we said, I mean, you've been on maternity leave for the last 2 months. So that must have made things a little bit more stressful in terms of everything that's going on. So how's everything going?
Yeah, and very good. So yeah, didn't quite expect to start my maternity leave with my second toddler and yeah, like being a full-time mum and not being able to rest. But it has been quite good, and as my colleagues have said, I couldn't have timed it better, really.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna really sort of do isolation, then really isolating is a good one, isn't it? But I mean, for those who don't know already, tell us a little bit about OpenPayd, and then we'll kind of get into your background a little bit after that.
Yeah, sure. So OpenPayd is a company that essentially focuses on bringing banking and payment APIs to enable corporates to basically do cross-border payment banking for themselves, but also for their end customers.
I mean, that's a pretty big problem you're sort of solving for people there, isn't it? With and actually one that so many organizations really have. That's a big mission, right?
Yeah, that's like a very interesting one, actually. It's something that I have been passionate about since actually early days in FinTech. Was quite focused on that at Bankable and then at Fidor. And basically, when I learned about OpenPayd, so there was on one side the team, but also the vision and the way they had designed it around essentially single access points to plenty different services, so bank accounts in multi-currencies, FX, card processing, also access to liquidity partners in crypto,
Yeah.
And even more important, a set of license that enable us to actually let customers that don't have license to offer banking services to their end customers. So you could think of neobanks, for example.
Well, and like you say, as new players start coming into banking more and more, then they're looking to newer players from a technological perspective to kind of get them into the game as well, aren't they? So it's a really interesting market. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know you, I mean, if you're in fintech and you don't know Sophie, then I don't know what you're doing, quite frankly. But if you, if anybody who doesn't know your background, tell us a little bit about it, because as you say, you spent quite a long time at Fidor as well, so you're sort of steeped in technology transformations, aren't you?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started my career in finance, in M&A and investment in growth equity funds. Fell in love with startups, wanted to go more operational, so I actually moved to the UK to launch HelloFresh. I stayed until the national rollout. It was an amazing experience, but I actually wanted something a bit more complex, and it was the beginning of the fintech wave at that time. And I thought it was really the perfect way to mix my finance background and basically interest in startup. So I joined a company that at that time was called Cards Prepaid, that since then has been rebranded in Bankable. And essentially, we launched the very early days of banking as a service, so launching card programs and payments for large corporates. So I spent 3 years there as a head of product strategy, and then I moved to Fidor, where I spent 5 years, first launching their bank in the UK, then working on their European expansion strategy, and the last 2 years at Fidor, I was in charge of sales for Europe, and essentially helping corporates launch banks. And I joined OpenPayd back in September, so a bit more than 9 months ago.
Mm. It's interesting. I mean, I first came across you when you were at Fidor, and actually, I mean, it was a one-woman mission to create a bank in the UK, and it just struck me the passion that you had for customer service, the way in which you went about engaging with consumers in terms of pricing and everything that you were doing. It was just an amazing thing to see, because it was such a small team, but you did so many different things to kind of make it happen. So all of that coming now to what you're doing with OpenPayd, it must be a great recipe for really sort of showing people that you've done it, you've made it happen, you've sort of taken things forwards from idea to them being executed. So and I think at OpenPayd you guys have started announcing some really interesting moves, actually. I think particularly in Asia at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah. So actually, so as I have mentioned to you, we have basically a global expansion strategy. So there is on one side the technology, and on the other side the partners, basically, which we are distributing, and finally there are the licenses. The licenses are super important to be able to follow our customers across geographies and enable them to actually do business wherever they want. And so Asia is definitely a point of interest to us. That's the reason why we have partnered with Matchmove to basically apply for a digital banking license there. It's true that in Asia, banking as a service is still early stage. There are other players that have announced they were moving there. There is quite a lot of business happening, but propositions are still basically very early stage and not enabling to develop the type of user experience that we have in Europe. So we are focusing on Asia. We are on the other side also keeping on securing money transmitter licenses in the US. We have 44 at the moment. We should have all the state licenses by the end of the year. And this year we also secured a Turkish license, which is super interesting because it's a very dynamic market that is yet to be tackled. So we just appointed a CEO there, and yeah. So essentially, we want to cover all geographies through licenses because technology can follow really.
Well, and like you're saying, not small markets as well, right? You know, Europe is interesting, but lots of countries have got very small populations. Get to Asia, the US, and actually the ability to really sort of open up those markets, and actually your ability to scale that operation then is really, really exciting, isn't it? So tell us a little bit more about the partnership with Matchmove. Obviously, as you say, they're Singaporean based, aren't they? But I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening out there with regards to the sort of regulatory changes, isn't there? And as you say, that really opens up the market. So what does that partnership really mean?
Yeah, so I won't be able to go too much into details because we are currently in the application process for the digital banking license. But essentially, it is to launch banking proposition in Asia, and for OpenPayd basically to support Matchmove during that process, and hopefully expand further in Asia once we have secured that.
Well, it's exciting. Like I say, there's like I say, with the regulatory change there, it's opening up to really interesting players sort of coming into the space. I mean, I know you've talked for many years really about the sort of power of collaboration and competition rather than purely just being combative in terms of players in the market. And I guess this is another sign of actually people coming together, doing what they're best at doing and bringing that in. But do you see that collaboration sort of trend getting more and more pace?
I think so. So I think early days, I mean, we all remember because we were there, right? But even when you were B2C B2C mostly, you were some, let's say, fintech were directly competing with banks, but over the years they actually most of the time became supplier of them. I'm thinking of a very large money cross-border effects business, for example, that had this type of communications. Us, in terms of OpenPayd, we are really partnering with larger corporates and specifically banks. So essentially, we have licenses, e-money services licenses, and we also have in our network a bank in the Euro region. So that's part of our group. But besides that, we have also a lot of banking partners, and they enable us to distribute bank accounts to our end customers, so SMEs. And what we add as value is the power of technology. So essentially creating all these bank accounts through APIs, and we add also the knowledge around their industries and helping them with licenses, etc. But for the banks, we provide a new distribution point. We provide them new revenues in industries that they wouldn't be able to address as well because they like the agility in the technology. And on the other side, they provide us services, and we could even imagine in the future OpenPayd providing payment as a service to banks, because we have direct access to several payment networks, and there is a big interest for banks to actually outsource the payments and their compliance to focus on basically dealing with money, right?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, isn't it? I think we probably couldn't have predicted 10 years ago where the industry would have gone in real sort of clarity. But, seeing now in many organizations them sort of retrenching into what banking is best at doing and leaving technology to other people, it's really interesting to sort of see that sort of play out, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Of course, 10 years ago, we couldn't have known. I mean, we were already talking about it because it's what we were thinking could happen. But yes, it has definitely materialized, and it's such a time with COVID. I mean, it's really about joining forces rather than fighting, because I mean, most companies have been hit, including big banks, and while I would say probably some of them will be cutting projects in terms of digital services, is probably not the good time to do that.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, I think from what we've seen, hopefully digital is almost untouchable. I think the way in which they go about doing it is definitely up for grabs. I think many organizations have been investing in digital in a way that doesn't actually achieve what they want it to do. But now having players like yourself in the market and lots of different options, then so long as people do it in a different way, then they've got to sort of continue down this path. But you mentioned the C word there, COVID. I mean, how's things been affecting everything that you're doing at OpenPayd with that? Because obviously, cross-border payments is something that, as people physically can't start crossing those borders, then their reliance on actually getting money back to either family or friends or even just to maintain and manage their businesses. I mean, there's a much bigger reliance at that stage, isn't there? But how has it affected you guys at OpenPayd?
Yeah. So on an organization perspective, I mean, we planned much earlier than the lockdown. So basically, at the end of February, we were already doing plans around it, like identifying the key people to maintain operations, doing several tests. And we actually went into lockdown or working remotely like much before the lockdown itself. We thought it was important for our people, and we were convinced it could work remotely. So of course it took a couple of weeks to adapt, because you just communicate differently. But but it has been working quite well. We have been investing lots on physical and mental health well-being of our employees, recognizing that it was quite it could be a very challenging period. Some people have enjoyed being at home, and others have kids to deal with, and essentially it ends up being dealing with kids and trying to work. It's just not the same, right? And some are isolated. So we really focused on the people, and also improving our communications. On the company level, we used to have all ends every month. We have them every week, and I think so. Those are clearly the benefits of the COVID, right? Is that we have tested new things that will not disappear. I mean, like we are communicating better, and we really want to keep that on. The focus on our employees and this sense of community is extremely important. We knew it was, but COVID has really been the way to foster that. So that is on an organization perspective. On a customer perspective, we're quite lucky because we have a good mix of customers. It means we have brick and mortar customers, but we have also trading platforms, we have digital assets, we have marketplaces, and we haven't been as impacted as, I guess, other fintech, and we have even seen a bit of increase in volume in April, May of around 10 to 15%. So, wow. We have been seeing this increase in volume. On the other side, of course, some projects have been a bit postponed, particularly in the travel industry. But yeah, we hope it will catch up in the next few months.
Yeah, it is an interesting time, as you say. It's been fascinating, I think, from our perspective. Like you say, almost what's the company rituals that have to evolve to keep sort of relevant. And it's strange, like you say, going from a monthly town hall, because on a day-to-day basis you're all quite connected because you sit near each other, and on a monthly basis getting more connected by having a big now moving that to weekly, or I've said this a few times on the show, but my personal team meeting at 11FS was every 2 weeks. Now we meet every day. So it's like the change in connectivity and the things that you have to do. It's interesting to see when we get back to a bit more normality with regards to like going back into the office and whatnot, how much of this we sort of keep going. But again, it's always with market conditions, the people who adapt quickest are the ones who are most successful, right? So it's great to see those things changing. Where are most of your people based at OpenPayd?
So we have various locations essentially. So we have around, I would say, half in London. We have a certain number of people in Bulgaria. So they do legal, they do partnerships, they do compliance there. We have some people in Turkey as well. We've also the license. So we have a lot of developers, very strong community of developers. We have some people in Malta as well, where we have a license as well, and they are developers as well. And in London, essentially, it's product developers, sales, marketing, legal, partnerships, exec team, etc. So our main place is London, but we are a bit all over the world, and we have also a representative office in the US and a couple of people there.
Excellent. I mean, it's amazing. Like I say, when you've got a great technology, the expanse that you can kind of fill, because like you say, as we were saying at the top of the conversation, really this problem is the problem for so many big organizations. So I mean, one thing that I know, Sophie, when we've always talked that you're really sort of passionate about, and actually I should say, I mean, you were included, I think, in not just this year's Innovate Finance Women in FinTech, the 2019 one, but I think pretty much every one of them that I've ever seen. So, the power list is always a good indicator of the people who are really doing a lot within leadership positions within the FinTech space. If anybody's not seen it, head over to Innovate Finance and check it out. Really interesting kind of report that they put out. I mean, in this time, I've sort of heard various different sort of reports on this one from different people, but gender in FinTech has always been something that's been very imbalanced. I mean, do you think really what we're sort of learning right now is it doesn't matter who it is or where they are, actually in terms of filling roles and filling positions, there potentially could be, you know, positives to come out the other side of COVID, really for equality in that sense?
I think so. So clearly, like in leadership role, potentially, like we don't talk about the other aspect of life where, like, I mean, there is a different repartitions. But yes, I think it can be very positive, and so for a few reasons. First of all, it's because I think COVID really pushed companies to actually understand personal situation of people. So communicate more with people that are isolated, but also like just being more flexible with the hours of people that have to deal with kids. And I mean, it depends on how your household is organized, but when it's end up being women dealing with more the household chores and also the kids, etc., this flexibility is what a lot of women have been looking for, right? And I think having companies becoming more mindful of that can create opportunities where women can realize, okay, I actually can think about becoming reaching a leadership position, because actually my life can go with that. So that's the first point. The second point is, in startups, hopefully we are all focused on delivery, right? But some companies still focus on FaceTime. And when you go and get the kids after school, and if it ended up being the mum or one of the mums, right? It can be challenging. So like when now at distance, essentially we don't know the hours our employees are doing, but just focusing on what they deliver and the impact they have, but and not on them being here during the regular hours. I think it can create actually opportunities and shed the lights on some women that maybe were not seen as focused before because they were a bit less in the office. And finally, having a partner at home, or like whether male or female, but maybe more on sharing house chores, and for the other partner to actually realize that what it entails and the time it takes can maybe bring a bit more freedom and a better repartition of work at home. So yes, I think it can definitely bring a lot of opportunities. It just depends on how basically it evolves at homes and how it evolves in the mind of companies.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's sad that it's taken almost like literally a window into everybody's world for people to kind of almost admit that people have lives outside of work. You know, it's like, like everybody has kids and like a home. Like that's weird, you know, like it's but I completely agree with you. I think there's it is interesting to see, and I've sort of mentioned it on this show a few times, but it's interesting to see people that even new people that we're working with being so much more relaxed. You know, I've seen into everybody's houses and everybody's suddenly relaxing how they dress, and their kids are stomping around in the background. And I personally, honestly, I think it's I hope that's the thing that we take forward from this is people don't have to lose themselves when they put on a suit or put on their work attire and go to work. You know, the more people are them in their work, the better that they will be at work for me.
I couldn't agree more. Like, so as you know, David, I have been working remotely for quite some time, and I feel a bit less lonely in that respect. That several times I had my cat jumping on the desk, but nobody could understand at this time. While now I think it's the new norm, right? So
there you go. It's great. The whole world has joined us at our level at that stage, which is nice.
Yes, exactly.
Some good points and questions for you over on LinkedIn. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, I'm afraid. But Tega, I think I'm saying that right. Efeduma. Tell me if I got that wrong, Tega. Like I probably have. Apologies. Hi, Sophie. Are you considering the African market anytime in the future?
Oh, we are absolutely interested. I mean, like Turkey is not quite Africa, but it's a step forward towards the south. No, of course there is. I believe the propositions are very early stage there, and there is a lot of cross-border payments going up there. So we have customers actually in the remittance industries that are doing quite a lot of remittance towards Africa, corporates and individuals. So we are already serving Africa somehow, and securing license there could be of definitely interest in the future, because Africa is of interest to a lot of our customers.
Yeah, and then obviously another geo there with not a small amount of people, right? So you guys are very much going after the big markets, which is very exciting.
Exactly.
Question there from Deval Gore. Sophie, great to see you, which is always nice. It's very polite, Deval, I have to say. It's always nice. Slightly different question. What is your view on fintech clusters globally? So, London versus Paris versus Singapore. I mean, does it really matter?
Yes, I don't think it really matters anymore. Like most of the companies I collaborate with, I wouldn't know exactly where they are based. I think fintech is going towards global things, right? So of course, when you need licenses, you cannot be as global, or you can be, but by acquiring a lot of licenses, which is what we are doing. But essentially, the most important is really for us to focus on the best partners we can to distribute to our customers, and it doesn't really matter where they are based.
Fantastic. I mean, it's great to see the company doing so well, Sophie. It's great to see you and catch up as well.
Yes.
I mean, a comment here from Nigel Walsh. It says a little bit less lonely. Love that. We've all leveled up the playing field a little bit, and it's great to see in the industry. So fantastic to catch up with you, Sophie. We're coming to the top of the hour, so we probably should let everybody get on with their days. But where can people learn a little bit more about you and OpenPayd?
OpenPayd website, so openpayd.com, my LinkedIn, and you can reach out to me by DM. I would be happy to get in touch.
Fantastic. All right, guys, that's all we have for you today, I'm afraid, but we will be back tomorrow with Cindy White from MyTech and from Andy Moore from Anna Money. So the screen is going to get a little bit smaller, but you're going to get 3 for the price of 2 at that stage. So we're going to be talking about how Anna Money is helping a wave of people considering self-employment in these tough times, and what the role of digital identity verification can actually play within that. That's all we have for you today, I'm afraid, guys. See you the same place, same time tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. So stay safe. Goodbye.
Bye.